anti-gatering video, we're going to go ahead and assemble this Backwater mud motor kit. This is their glider kit, and this is a 13 horsepower Predator engine. It is a 420cc Predator 13 horsepower engine. It is the Hemi version. I'll go ahead and put the model number down below just in case you're interested in that. And start. Alright, so today we are assembling the Backwater. We're going to go ahead and use the same engine that I had on the Swamp Runner. I just got finished taking the Swamp Runner off of this engine, and now we're going to put the Backwater kit on it. So this is the assembly video for the Backwater mud motor kit, the S.W.O.M.P Lite. Alright, so this Backwater kit, I ordered it approximately a year ago, maybe more. I ordered it, it sat for a long time, something popped up, and now I'm able to get to it. I called Backwater, they talked to me on the phone, and everything that I have is current and up to date, so nothing that you see here as of right now when the video is coming out, it's all up to date and not old or anything like that. So that's something to talk about, was that I did order it a while ago, but it's still a brand new kit. I just haven't got to it till now. So we're gonna go ahead and install this. So for the instructions, we're just gonna go off of what they have or what they send in their kit. They give you a bolt list and everything that you need to, so I'm gonna go ahead and start unpacking this. On the front, it's windy, so bear with me. On the front, they have their tools. Tool list, take a look at it. Have the majority of them, but we'll get to it. I end up using this electrical tape for everything, and I just have it in my bag with my ammo for alligator season. Alright, so as you may or may not have seen, there's 3 boxes. I did already open this just to make sure that everything wasn't damaged, or, well, I should say that anything was damaged in shipping. That was the reason why I opened it up when I got it, and after that I closed it back up. So we'll go ahead, I'll unbox everything. Packing was really good, as you may or may not have seen. They had these boxes lined on one side of the box, and on the other side of the box was a shaft, and that was all foamed in, so that way there's a really good chance this wasn't going to get damaged at all. Came in one box, and actually it arrived pretty good. It wasn't mistreated too bad. I mean, the corners were dented up and nothing in the box was too loose, but it was definitely packaged good. So open up these 3 boxes and see what we have in them. This big box has the plate, the ride plate, one box has the tiller handle. Put that here. So we got a hat. That will fly away in this wind. Got a prop. It's going to be tiller mount. And then I did something special, as you can see, for the transom mounts. So I ordered originally with the kit, let me get you closer. So with the kit, I originally ordered the clamp-on mount. So that way I could bolt it onto my transom. I didn't have to drill any more holes, and it would work good for me because I'm testing all kinds of different engines, motors, kits, all that. So I didn't want to drill any more holes in my transom. So that's why I got the clamp on. But they highly recommend their Versa mount. So that way you can change this to the angle on your transom. And I believe they said it actually sits lower on the transom too, so you get a better angle on it. You could adjust this to the angle on your transom, so that way no matter what, this is going to sit flat. No matter if your transom is angled this way, it would mount like that, or if your transom is straight up, it's gonna adjust to it so that way that your engine sits flat. Now this mount does have this on top. It's just that they wanted me to show this in the video. I talked to them about it, they sent it out to me, so all that you would do is, or all that I would do, you would just order that mount and it would come with this top section on top of that other one. So for this, I'm going to be using this clamp-on mount. They still want you to drill a hole through it to put it onto your transom, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want to put any more holes in my transom. If you're going to permanently do a kit and you decide to go with this one, then it'd probably be a good idea to do. But for me, I'm not going to, because I'm testing all kinds of different kits and motors and all that. But if you do order this kit, it comes with this Versa mount. So you're going to have to drill into your boat anyways. It's going to be 2 to 4 holes depending on how you want to mount it, but I believe it's 4 holes. And it's going to be on there. It's not going to go anywhere. So back to the instructions, if they haven't blown away. Okay, so I need some engine bolts. Where are those located? Okay, so real quick, that came in the kit. Got your tiller handle mount. 1 prop. This is a 8x4. Got your ride plate, shims for the ride plate, and then you will get 1 transom mount. I have 2 just to show you the difference, because they say their Versa mount is the better mount. I got the clamp-on transom mount, so that's what I'm going to be running because I don't want to drill any holes in the transom. And then we got a few hardware packets, so that's what came in the kit. Also had an envelope, and now we are going to check the output shaft length. So there's our gauge. So with this kit, it's not really, so to say, adjustable. If you need to, if it's not the proper length, you're going to have to cut the output shaft on your engine. Hopefully it's the right length for us and we don't have to cut it. If so, you need a sawzall or a cutoff wheel or something to cut the output shaft on your engine. So this is the gauge that they give you, and hopefully it's going to be okay. Okay, this is the Predator 420 Hemi version. I think it's 349, because I guess you put it up to the flange where it's going to bolt to, and that's definitely a lot more. Holy cow. My goodness, that's a lot to cut off. I have a lot to cut off. That's going to be approximately 1.5 inches to 1 inch, somewhere in there. So I gotta go find something to cut this with. The one thing that I have is a sawzall. We'll see if that'll do. I don't have a cutoff wheel, but maybe the day to do it. Dagnabbit. Alright, turns out Pops does have a grinder. So I got a 4-inch grinder, and it actually has the cutoff blade or the cutoff wheel on it. So that's what I'm going to give a try. Never used one before, and I'm not too thrilled about having to use one to install the kit, but we're going to make it work. So I got to run some electric I got my hearing protection, eye protection, and my gloves, backup pair of gloves. So we're gonna make that work. Alright, so once again, use the gauge to where we are going to be mounting it, which is this flange here. Put it flush up against that, get it down, and then I sort of just scribed a line with this since it's metal on metal, and that way I know where exactly I'm going to be cutting. So I know where I'm going to be cutting. Let's get some hearing protection on. These are also Bluetooth. They're wonderful. And if you're in the winter months, they help keep your ears really warm. Guess that's not going to work with these. And you should probably not have flip-flops doing this, but sorry. Alright, so step one is done. I cut it just a little short so that way I don't have to cut this again if I made it a little too long. So this will work. It's cut. Felt a little nervous about it, didn't really like using that cutoff wheel, but we got it done. So on to step two. Okay, step two, we're going to check the bolt circle thread depth on the engine. So we're going to make sure that these holes here are not going to, so they may actually. So right there, that's where I'm going to get at. So I need to look on the coupler housing and see how much of this is going to be taken up when we mount it. So step two, we check for bolt circle thread depth. Step three, we're going to install the keyway onto the coupler shaft, clean the keyway slot, put blue Loctite on there, and then we're going to hammer it in. So they did supply the keyway. Make sure your engine is turned off, fuel is off, all that fun stuff. See if there's a better way. Alright, so this needs to be cut off too. Alright, and remember that this is going to be hot if you just got done cutting. I've let this sit a little bit, clean out the inside, and apply blue Loctite, and then put the keyway in. Actually, it looks like it's going to sit pretty tight, or pretty level, which is really good. So the shaft I got was a 65 inch. They have a 55 and a 65. 65 I think would probably be better. I think on their side a 16 or a 65 is for 15 to 17 inch transoms, and then the 55 is for anything less than a 15 inch transom. Alright, so step 4, we're going to be putting this on now. So make sure that you got your hole down. So if you look inside, you can see that you have a keyway slot in there, so make sure to line that up. So number 4, you're going to expose the coupler shaft. Take out the 2 clamping bolts in the coupler that are closest to the engine. This ensures that the coupler is not tight and allows the thread lock to be applied. Slide the coupler onto the output shaft of the engine. It is important to hold the frame and drive shaft in line with the output shaft on the engine to prevent binding. It is useful to use something that is 5 inches to rest the frame on. Now slide the coupler shaft onto the output shaft of the engine. You might need to use a rubber mallet and tap on the prop end of the drive shaft to slide it on. Make sure the coupler is all the way on and that the 2 shafts are touching each other. Apply the blue Loctite and torque the coupler bolts to 125 inch-pounds or 10 foot-pounds. The metal on the right-hand side, that's that's stable, that's where it's going to stay. That's always there, even when it was off. And then the metal on the left-hand side that you see mating up against that, that's the output shaft of the engine. So we're tapping on the end till these 2 touch. These 2 are now touching, so that means that the inner shaft is moved up as far forward as it can be and where it's supposed to be. So now we need to clamp it down. I'm going to go ahead and pull the... And now we're going to put a thread lock in here and put the bolts in. Alright, so we have thread lock on this bolt and this bolt. They're tightened down. And now we're going to slide this forward. Slide the drive tube and bell housing onto the engine. Apply blue thread lock and flange bolts. Start them by hand, ensure they're not cross-threaded, and then thread them back on. This is 150 inch-pounds or 12 foot-pounds. This comes as a holder like this. Cut it off. You can put it into the end like that to really get a good grip, or you can put it in the center for a T-handle. Just a real quick side note, yes, I did not use a torque wrench or anything, but make them so that they're tight, but don't over tighten because this is an aluminum cast block and you will strip it out, so that's why you need to worry about your torque specs. So if you're really worried about it, then use it, but just do not over tighten them. Measure the amount of the drive shaft sticking out from the lower bearing housing. Without the bearing housing cap on there, there should be 3 3/8 inch of shaft exposed. Maximum of 1/8 inch tolerance. Either way is allowed. If this is correct, awesome. If the measurement is too short, leave the same amount of space between the prop and the output shaft. If it is longer, the coupler needs to slide further onto the output shaft, which most likely requires the output shaft to be cut shorter. And that's why I cut mine a little short, just in case. So I am 1/8 short, or 2/8, or yeah, 2/8 short. I should be 3 3/8. I'm at 3 1/8. So I need to take the housing off, loosen it up, and pull this out. Alright, so they should probably change the instructions around a little bit, because I gotten everything tightened down and I needed to adjust that, so I had to undo everything and adjust it. So once you get that collar on, don't tighten them down, don't put any blue Loctite on anything, and push this all the way up against here where it's mated up against the engine. Don't do any screws or anything, and then measure your play. So you're going to be measuring So I need to pull some more out. I still haven't moved it at all. So I'm pushing the engine forward and pulling back on this shaft. spin it around so I can see that sight hole. Then I'm going to push it up against the engine so that it's flush. And then measure how much I have sticking out again. And I have about 3.5, in between 3.5 and 3 3/8, which is where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to keep it right there. So now I can pull this out nice and slow. So now I need to spin this around so I can get to those screws. And now we'll cinch down everything, put blue Loctite tight on it, and torque it down. That would be the only things that I would change in the instructions as of right now. Step 8. Install the lower bearing housing cap. The bearing housing cap is left hand threaded. Apply sealant or Teflon tape. Liquid thread sealant is best. Tighten with a channel lock pliers. It's a reverse thread, but you can turn it right until you feel it skip that first beginning thread. And then you turn it left. So with it being reverse thread, move it left to tighten it, right comes undone. This was already on it, so I'm just going to use this to stop it from getting marred up. I mean, I really don't care, but that's what you guys can do. So, marred it up a little bit, but it's a mud motor. So for these, you can put it on backwards. Maybe one good way to tell is that the writing is on the back side, but think of it as a screw through the water. You want this part forward, and then it spins through that way, so you're going to be going forward. This is a hex, so something different than the tapered shaft that I'm used to dealing with. I got 2 washers. I don't know if both of them go there, and then the instructions, they just say I have one. So I'm just going to use both. So 2 washers, and I have 3 nuts. Go ahead, tighten this one down, tighten this one up against it, and then there's a lock nut that came with it, so I'm going to put that on the end just to do it. This is a 15/16. Install the prop. No nuts are installed on the shaft before the prop, so install the hex hub prop, slide it over the shaft until it pushes up against the RevoClean groove shoulder. The prop is held in by a washer and 2 keeper nuts that push the prop tight against the shoulder. The keeper nuts should not bottom out on the hex of the shaft. They should push the prop to hold it tight onto the shoulder. It is a good idea to put anti-seize on the hex of the prop when assembling. Alright, so I just had someone help me. I picked up the engine, they picked up the shaft. Got the first part of this through here and then just slid it forward so you're not carrying the whole weight of the engine. And then I lifted it up by the tail, and that way this pivot hole on this shaft comes up because it ends up being about here. And it's easier to lift up the tail than it is the engine. So I had it way far forward, like this. And I just kept holding the tail and manipulating it, and the other person put the bolt in. So that is how that is going to go. And this is definitely a two-person operation unless you have a crane to carry the engine. This is going to be too heavy for one person. I can carry a swamp runner kit by myself with the engine, but since this is the shaft and a coupler and everything together, it's just way too heavy. The swamp runner I can take the shaft out and carry because it's just the coupler and the engine, but with the shaft connected to this and all of it, it's just too heavy to carry by yourself. It's going to be a 3/4 inch. Thing is, I see a lot of flex in this transom. That's a lot of weight on the transom. I don't like it. So now we're going to see if we can spin this. So after installing the prop on step 9, this is now, I skipped a lot of steps and put the transom bracket on. So now it's going to be, I'm going back into the regular steps now. So we're going to be installing this handle mount. Now for this, it looks like it's only set up for left hand because you fit it perfectly like this. But on that other side, you'd have to flip it like this, which it would still work, but you can't flip it like that because it's facing the wrong way. So here fits perfect for left. If you want on the other side, then maybe switch it this way. It would probably still work. But I'm gonna do it lefty and see how it goes. Lefty as in you're steering with your left hand. Sometimes if you're right-handed, left feels more natural to you. Going with the tie longtail, everyone put their handle on the right, so I did a right hand. But all like outboard motors have a left hand. So we're gonna do left-handed and see if I like that or not. Good thing that I like is they have a cutout for the drain here, so it'll fit nice and flush. But it's going to be hard to get to that drain, so keep that in mind. There should be another one on the other side, but look at your engine, and if there isn't, that's something to think about. If you need to do maintenance on your engine, you need to get to that. So make sure your bolts fit. Perfect, perfect. I would recommend going up like this. It is more difficult to reach, but if you put them down, then you have more hanging up down here. You have the thread sticking out and it's more to catch. But if you have it flipped around the other way where the threads are going up, then all you have is a bolt head on the bottom. So it'll be like this and there's less to snag and catch. One washer, the bolt. This is also a dangerous spot because I've lost multiple lock nuts and washers and stuff up under there, so having it angled down this way helps when your fingers are hard to get up in there. This is going to be a 9/16. So you have two different tightening things here for the handle. Not really tightening, but this one tightens. This one is a through bolt. So your handle should come pre-rigged for the most part. I accidentally left this in the sun and it is very hot to the touch. So you see where that through bolt is. Through bolts on the handle. And again, I'm keeping the threads that way on the inside, so that way it's less to get hung up on. Hung up. I understand why they can't just keep everything the same. 7/16. So through bolts on there now. You can still see that it wiggles. So we gotta tighten this up now. And that's a different size bolt. That's half. Perfect, I have a socket out for that. So now she's all set with the tiller. So we installed the handle, put the through bolt through, tightened it up. Installing the cavitation plate. Let's do that. So for now, I'm gonna not use these. I'm gonna take these out on the water for me for the first test run. but for now we're just going to put the plate on. Alright, so you see all of these here. We're going to undo them. You have long ones and short ones. Long ones is if you start getting into using a lot of spacers or those shims. If you're not using many shims or you're just running it without any, then you're just going to use the short ones, short screws. So as the other instructions say, put it on and slide it down. This is almost, it's pinching it pretty good. And I guess that's going to be the best it's going to be. You may not want to torque or blue Loctite these in just yet, but make sure to hold on to these long screws. This is going to be 3/8. Just so you know, I think there were screws left in the front. I think I'm in the back holes, and that's just what seemed to mate up best here. Just keep going across, tightening them until they feel good. I'm not gonna go too crazy on them for now because I'm probably gonna undo them at the boat ramp, try shimming and see if that helps at all. And also check my clearance with the prop. So then after it's installed, just to make sure, just check your clearance and make sure that your prop isn't going to hit up here and on your skeg, just to make sure there's no hiccups during manufacturing, no issues whatsoever. Prop spins fine, so we're good. So kill switch is always a real booger. So the way that I did this to tie into it was these two yellows are, I think they were connected together. So what I ended up doing was I cut it, put a splice from this wire into two wires. So that's just one connection, solid crimp, and that's one solid. The black goes to the kill switch. This white one connects back to this yellow wire. So that way that still has its connection, and then this goes to the kill switch. You have two wires coming out of your kill switch, one for ground, one for hot. Black is just what I associate with ground, and red is hot. I know it changes everywhere you go, whether it's automotive or in the house, but for me, black is ground. So I'm going to split these wires. Yeah, I'm going to put the red on this because it's going to be hot. I'm going to put a regular connector there. And then this black is going to go and mount to the engine as a ground. So that way, whenever the kill switch pulls, then you have your kill switch, and it pretty much triggers your low oil sensor alarm, and that's what cuts the engine. That's how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to go ahead, rig this up. You know how to do wires. Going to get that done. Alright, so now you just need a few zip ties. Figure out where you want to run all of it. Before zip tying any of this, we're going to go ahead and get this ran. That's your throttle cable. 10mm. Alright, so I used the 8mm and a Phillips head. Got this screwed loose. So pull the cable out. Then I'm going to feed it through. And then I'm going to feed it back through the back end of the pipe. Or the housing. A little bit of a pain to play with, but I'm sure they had it Loctite down also. This is always a mess to try and get on camera, but I'm trying. Last time I went without Loctite, it was awful. Blue Loctite everywhere. It's just something that you don't want to come undone when you're out there, unless you are okay with manually throttling your motor back in. Mistake I made is there's the metal piece here that goes into the slot facing more towards the front of the engine. Idle speed, full throttle. So throttle is connected, we just gotta zip tie it in place. Okay, so we installed this 13 horsepower Predator engine onto this backwater kit. It is the Hemi version, if that matters to you. I'll put the model numbers down below. But we went ahead and we did put this backwater kit on it. From my first impressions, everything is built very heavily. Everything is reinforced and looks like it will last. The only issue that I have, or that I'm going to have to get used to, is the way that the tail is. With it turned around like this and the way it's going to be trailered, I got to come up with a rub stop for the seat because it rubs on the seat. That's just something about having a new mud motor that I'm going to have to think of doing, is putting a rub area up there. Installation was pretty straightforward and easy. The only thing that was not easy or requires more hands-on than the other kits I've handled is that I did have to use the cutoff wheel and cut off some of the output shaft on the engine. That is something that I don't think a lot of people have the ability to do. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I was lucky enough to have a grinder in the house, or in the garage, that my father had. So that may limit some people. You could also use a sawzall, so that is another way of being able to cut that. So installation isn't as easy as the other tie kits I've handled, but after cutting that, everything was pretty straightforward. You could mess up on a few things, like judging the distance if you didn't cut it the proper length, but that's just part of getting used to the kit that you're running and being familiar with it. So makes you pay attention, and we'll see how it runs. So the next video is going to be water testing. We're going to take it out on the lake, dial it in, see if we can get this running good. The only dialing in for this kit is going to be the back ride plate. They call it a cavitation plate, but in all reality it's just a ride plate to keep the prop up where it's supposed to. It comes with shims, and there's different bolt holes that you use back there, so depending upon how it rides, the way that it sits, you can adjust how it rides. So that's going to be the dialing in type of part for this backwater kit. Transom Mount is very heavily built, and it is very heavy. I almost ran out of bolts, or bolt space, so to say. I have them almost tightened all the way down. I could probably put more wood in there as a filler, but this transom itself isn't too thin. But just something to think about. But it's solid. The coupler housing is all aluminum, all one piece, looks great. and will definitely hold up. The only weird thing about this is that this whole system rides on one bolt, and as long as that bolt is strong enough, that's great, but everything else is way overbuilt, and the weak point would be that that one bolt. In the drivetrain, there's really nothing to give. I think everything in the drivetrain is strong. It's going to be somewhere in the engine that's going to be your weak point. Keyway in the shaft, I don't think that's going to break. The way that it's coupled to the keyway and to the output shaft of the engine is good. That's solid. I don't know if this is solid or hollow tube for the inner tube. That goes all the way down to the prop. For down there, that is a stainless steel prop, and it most likely will not break. So once that hits something that the engine can no longer turn, something probably in the engine is going to snap before anything else in this drivetrain does. So that could be good or bad depending upon how you look at it, but I'd rather be able to fix it all in the water than put an engine down and be stranded. But for install was pretty simple, didn't need too many tools besides that grinder needing a sawzall to cut the output shaft on your engine. If you run a Predator engine, at least for the 13 horsepower, you will need to cut it. So keep that in mind. Other than that, installation was pretty easy, and we'll get out on the water and test this. One other thing about the install of this backwater kit was running the throttle cable. It's a short throttle cable, and you have to run it kind of weird. I have it zip tied to the base of the handle, and then it goes under the engine, comes around back here, and then goes through over the valve cover. I did have to put a insulator or rub stop for that throttle cable, and I zip tied it through the bottom right bolt hole in the engine block. And I just zip tied it right there, and that'll stop that throttle cable from chafing if it moves around or does anything weird. So I have a rub stop there, but it's a short run where you can't run it through the back anywheres, and I'm not going to run it up through the front because the cable is going to be kinked up weird. So only true natural way was to pull it around the bottom of the engine, around the side, and to pull it sideways on the throttle cable. This is a different throttle cable than I'm used to. I'm used to the braided throttle cables, and this one is a solid one. It's a solid thick wire. So that was something different that I had to play with. The instructions were a little out of line for me. I would have done a few steps different, and I did do a few things different, as in mounting the transom bracket, putting the engine onto it once I had the coupler and shaft on it, and that made it easier to hook up the tiller handle and to do the safety kill switch. So when you go to get to that part, I'd probably follow all the steps to get the coupler and the shaft on. Then I'd get your transom mount mounted, and then mount your engine onto that, and then start your wiring, your throttle cable, and hooking up your handle, your tiller handle. So that would be the only things I would change in the directions, and good. So up next, water test.